Patrick Moore with PopCultureKick.com, and I'm joined here today with my friend Michael Carrell from ESPN Houston. Welcome, Michael.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Oh, thanks for coming on. And today we're going to be talking about a movie and a book that we both have really treasured and enjoyed, Project Hail Mary. It's directed by Phil Lord and Chris Miller, and it stars Ryan Gosling, and I think we both have seen it multiple times.
It's true.
And we both read the book, and we're just really pleased. It's the best possible movie adaptation of a book that was already pretty good. It opened to about 141 million worldwide at the box office, with 80.5 million in North America, which is the biggest non-franchise opening in the US since Oppenheimer, and Studio Amazon MGM's biggest opening ever. So, like I said in my review, it was something of a Hail Mary itself for Amazon MGM, because the movie cost a pretty penny to make. It cost 250 million to produce. So, and a lot of that went to building practical sets, and the ship itself, the Hail Mary, was not CG or miniatures or anything. They really built that ship in a soundstage to give Ryan Gosling, who plays Dr. Ryland Grace, a tactile ship to reside in and a laboratory to perform experiments in, because, you know, the whole crux of the movie is he's a scientist who has to plunge himself into deep space to come up with the way to beat these astrophage. Anyway, Mike, thanks for coming on. I was going to ask you, what do you think Project Hail Mary, as well as it's been received, is going to be up for any Oscars? I know it's pretty early.
I mean, it is early, but I think with how it, like watching it, having watched it multiple times now, I feel like it would be in the running at the very least, since for sure with Best Picture being like at least 10 usually, 10 films, I would imagine it's going to be in that running. I forget. I think we were Shalice and I were talking about it the other day. We were talking about maybe adapted screenplay as a possibility, Ryan Gosling as a possibility. I don't know if James Ortiz can be like supporting actor, but maybe, probably not. But like, you know, maybe something along those lines.
For his voice and his stand-in performance as Rocky.
Because I don't know, like, since it's primarily his voice, I don't know that a supporting actor would like fit the bill for that. But like, I don't know, I liked Rocky, so
yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I think Best Picture, Best Actor, probably Best Adapted, and then let me back up. I think for sure visual effects, production design, things like that too.
Yeah, I think it's definitely a lock for best production design and VFX. It's bringing people into the theater, you know? It's putting butts in seats, which is what they want. I know Matt Damon got... I forgot when The Martian came out, which is the other Andy Weir novel that was adapted by Drew Goddard, and Drew Goddard ended up getting a Best Adapted Screenplay nomination off that, so maybe he'll do it again. But Matt Damon got a Best Actor nomination, although I remember back in 2015, the movie was nominated at the Golden Globes for Best Comedy, and you know, it wasn't really a comedy. It had funny parts, but... Yeah. I think it was just that 2050 was so overloaded, but they loved the Martian so much they wanted to toss it a bone, so they kind of winced at it, and you know, they're just like, give it a best comedy nomination. But Matt Damon nominated that year. It ended up going to Leonardo DiCaprio for The Revenant. So I do think this movie's so well received, and it all hinges on Ryan Gosling so much. I think he'll be looking at a Best Actor nomination, because it's just nothing without Ryan Gosling.
Yeah, I mean, it was a truly like magnetic performance, and you know, his balance is in terms of comedy and balancing those emotional moments he's able to like move you in those different key elements, even without a human co-star with him. It's a rock alien. He's able to do that. I always, when I talk to people about the movie, I always reference the moment when I assume we can go full spoilers in this. Let me back up before I can say anything. Uh, I assume we're going to go full spoilers, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Because I always reference the moment that Grace wakes up after caring for Rocky and, watching over him after Rocky's jacked up in the movie. And when he realizes Rocky's back up, that there's like a slight hesitation and a slight thing that he does that's just, it's a subtle thing, but it really stands out to me and really like brought a tear to my eye, a couple of tears, because it's just it's such a subtle cue that he does that just really hit home for me, and just the instant hug and all that. Like I loved his performance here, and I again, funny, all the elements of a very good performance from Ryan.
All right. Yeah, I loved. I think my most heartfelt moment was when, he spends his whole time just knowing it's a one-way ticket for him, a one-way trip. But then Rocky tells him he'll give him the 2 million kilograms of astrophage to get him home, and he turns away from Rocky. At first because he's just absolutely bawling, and then he turns back around and he's like, thank you, Rocky, and Rocky's like, why are you making a sad face? He's like, I'm crying because I'm so happy. But that part, and just how much Dr. Grace cares for his kids, that Ryan Gosling really pulls that off. And I know some people would say that, it's unbelievable that Ryan Gosling is single in this movie. So it doesn't matter how good looking you are. Sometimes, you just can't make it work. Ryan Gosling really pulls that off. You buy that he's smart, like he's doctorate level smart when it comes to molecular biology. And you buy that he really bricked it in the scientific community with his hypothesis that life can exist without water. He kind of left that community behind, and now he teaches middle school science, but he doesn't resent that job. Like, he really loves his kids. He's happy to be doing that. If anything, he resents his old colleagues in the scientific community. Speaking of resentment, that makes me think of Sandra Hüller as Ava Stratt. I thought if Ryan Gosling was the perfect choice to play Dr. Grace, but Sandra Hüller was also the perfect choice to play Ava Stratt. Can you tell me what you thought of her performance?
I mean, it is a softer performance in terms of what you would expect from Ava Stratt, especially coming off of the book, but it works for what they were going for with this movie. I thought she brought, there is a warmth to her, but at the same time, there is I got to get this done no matter the cost of it all. And I really liked her performance. And then she has one of the standout scenes, of course, with the karaoke scene that is another like heartfelt type moment that I would never imagine Book Strat doing. But for her, I mean, she played it perfectly, and she was a great addition to this cast, and she was a standout for sure.
Yeah, they don't have anything like that in the book. Her, just grabbing the mic But
No.
I did like how she started singing that song to kind of basically show the rest of the team, the team of scientists and engineers that she's on the ship with, that she is a human, and she's to remind them that yeah, she's in charge, but we're all humans and we're all trying to save each other. But then she cuts the song short. She's like, okay, that's enough. And then she books it. I
Yeah,
was
she's
like,
only willing to show so much of herself in those moments. But I think she understood the moment. Well, like the character understands the moment very well, and like, I need to help bring these people together. They were already doing that with the singing and hanging out and all that, but like to see your leader do that, I think was a big thing for all of them. And even Ryland, when he turns and kind of like, oh, okay, yeah, I see you, Eva Stratt. Like it's a cool moment for sure.
Yeah. And there's another thing. The Ryland obviously was not there, or another spoiler. So spoiler, but Ryland was not there of his own accord. He was there against his will, and it's because Shapiro and Dubois in the movie, we don't know who they are. I had to look it up. There's this. We get a glimpse of them in the karaoke scene. It's the black man sitting with Shapiro and Dubois are each the science officer of the team they're training. So the Project Hail Mary is training a team of 3, like a pilot, another scientist, and a molecular biologist. And Shapiro, and then they have a backup team of 3, that fill those same roles. So, but Shapiro is kind of the first Team A, the science officer of Team A, and then the backup team, Dubois, is the backup science officer. So, and
I think it's flipped. I think it's Dubois is the main one, and then Shapiro's the backup.
okay. Well,
Yeah.
but they were in the book. It goes more in depth that they're having a relationship together, and they tell Ryland, who's kind of taken over as Strat's kind of not right hand man, but just kind of he's not being trained for the mission specifically, but he's kind of her liaison to the scientific community, and he kind of helps get the teams that are being trained, get them all situated. But they're supposed to have these weekly meetings with Dr. Grace, and Dubois immediately makes him uncomfortable by telling him that he's begun a sexual relationship with Shapiro. Yeah. And that's completely cut out of the movie. And I had to look up the actors playing them, but we get a glimpse of Shapiro and Dubois. They're sitting together on one of those bar stool tables during the karaoke scene, and then later on they're conducting a little experiment with what they think is 1 nanogram of astrophage, which is already ridiculously powerful because these astrophage contain so much energy. I mean, they live on the surface of the sun, so they must, but they mess up and they give them 1 milligram, which is like 1,000 or so times more, and it ends up killing both the science officer and the backup science officer in one fell swoop. And that leaves all Project Hail Mary kind of SOL. But Strat doesn't see it as a problem because she's been training a backup science officer this whole time with Ryland. Yeah. So, and in the book, it's not mentioned at all in the movie, but the robot thing that wakes Ryland up and kind of tends to his needs while he's in a coma was developed by the South Korean company. And their whole goal was to put chemo patients in induced comas so they could essentially go through they could skip and avoid all the pain and torment of going through chemo as cancer patients by being in a medically induced coma. But it turns out comas are dangerous, and being in a prolonged coma is really hard to survive. And they discovered something that ended up torpedoing their own company, which is only 1 in 7,000 people has the gene to survive a year-long or decade-plus long coma. And all the people we see that are candidates for Project Hail Mary in the movie, in the book, they were tested to, bear that gene, and Ryland is one of them. So when Shapiro and Dubois blow themselves up, it kind of makes more sense for Strat to turn to Ryland. The next one after him is a molecular biologist woman from Paraguay who, doesn't speak English, and, so, when Strat confronts him and says, you're the obvious, next choice. He says, no, go with the woman in Paraguay.
Yeah. It's definitely played out a lot different in the book compared to the movie. The movie, they don't mess with the coma-resistant genes. They decided to kind of streamline it to a certain extent and do some different things, which was probably the smart route to go. I do like that. I mean, I could have gone with it either way in terms of the book versus the movie, but for the purposes of the movie, it makes sense with as much as they were able to cram in to have something like that, like the coma resistant genes, and because it's even darker in the book in terms of how they tell him, and they tell Rylan, okay, you're going, or they give him 3 hours, whatever it is, and then it ends up being, oh no, you're going, and they hold them in a prison cell for like 3 days or something like that. Then they eventually induce the coma on him. Like it's pretty dark in the book, and again, trying to streamline that up to a little bit better. Still, as some people have pointed out, kind of jacked up what Strat did, but for the purpose of the movie, I thought it worked very well, and you don't need all the pieces from the book to make that story work.
Yeah.
I think it showcased that as the movie progressed and how good the movie is. Like I still think about the movie, so yeah, I think it worked well.
Yeah, it's still an ugly decision, and she had to kind of rob a man who, I don't think a woman like Strat really has friends, but it's obvious she cared for him. And she had to rob a man of his own agency and his own dignity.
But if she doesn't, like for me, it's like if she doesn't, the world kind of, more and more people die, and it's like send one man to save a bunch of people. I'll do that. I'm cold blooded like that. I send them.
Yeah. Plus that French drug she gave him. She tells him, that I'm going to give you a drug that causes retrograde amnesia that will. They give it, and this is horrible. This is during like the Cold War era, but it's like they give it to subjects they've had to torture because it makes them forget they were ever tortured and gets them back into being obedient. And she said gradually memories come back after the administration of that drug, and when Grace wakes up in space, he'll start to remember his name, his mission, and he would never forget stuff like science or important formulas. And she said by the time he remembered that he was there against his will, he may have already sent the Beatles back to Earth with she wouldn't know what it's called, but the Talmebas, the natural predator of the astrophage. But props to Andy Weir on making that, a story we can talk about and discuss. I know The Martian, which I just started rewatching last night, and I haven't finished reading the book yet, but cosmic radiation plays a big role in Project Hail Mary because Rocky's whole crew dies from it because they develop a space program and engineering and interstellar travel without understanding the theory of relativity or what radiation is, which kind of makes sense because they can't see, So his whole crew end up dying because they don't understand. Not only is their sun pelting them with radiation, once you get in a ship and travel past your own solar system, there's just general cosmic radiation from supernovas and other stars and other celestial events, and that ends up killing his whole crew. But he, an engineer who works kind of in the bowels of the ship near the astrophage filled fuel tanks, is kind of just by luck shielded from all the radiation by the astrophage. So, and I noticed that in The Martian, unlike Project Hail Mary, where radiation does play a role, in The Martian it doesn't. It's just like a throwaway sentence, like, my spacesuit in the hab has like a a layer of something that shields me from radiation. Because Andy
Mm-hmm.
Weir's, I just watched an interview with him. He's like, if Mark Watney were on Mars for, a year or two, his cancer would have cancer.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that would have been the undoing of him. Yeah, it's been a while since I've read The Martian, but I know that was my like entry point into Andy Weir's work. I remember just really loving it. The movie adaptation, I like it, but it's definitely one where I like the book better. I just think the book handles a lot of the like the radiation or like a lot of the situations that Mark Watney gets into. I felt like it's handled very very well. Well, obviously because that's the original story of it, but I liked all the just the minute little things that would go wrong, and Mark would have to figure something out to try and fix this issue. I remember the towards the end of the book, the using the rover to get from the the area where the hab's at to the launch pad. There's a whole thing in the book that they kind of just yada yada in the movie, and I get it to a certain extent, but I like that Project Hail Mary found a way to, in my opinion, better adapt its source material. Whereas, again, The Martian is good and it's a solid adaptation, but I do think personally for me the Project Hail Mary one is a much better adaptation than what we got with The Martian. Good movie, don't get me wrong, and good book. So
Yeah. No, I love both Project Hail Mary, the movie, and the book. Like, they both have their strengths. I just think this movie is the best possible adaptation that we could have gotten. And there are some times where I think the book was deliberately written with the movie in mind. Like, when Rylan wakes up from the coma after 12 years or so, and he's been in 1.5 Earth gravity because of the
mm-hmm.
centrifuge, right? And he just looks
Mm-hmm.
down and he has all these muscles. And I was like, oh, well, maybe Andy Weir wrote this with the Ryan Gosling or a Chris Pratt in mind. And I thought that was funny. And then having a little critter like Rocky is a easy sell. But I want to talk about. I really think the character design for Rocky was really good. Because did you read the book before you ever saw the movie?
Oh yeah, I read the book. I think let's see, the book came out in 2021. I think I read, well, I say read, I listened to it. I think I listened to it in 2022, I think. 2022, 2023. So it had been a while before the movie got announced or whatever. But yeah, Rocky is not how I pictured him, but it's also like I'm glad they did it that way, if that makes sense. Like I think it's a good the way they did it made sense for what Andy Weir had in mind.
Yeah, they do have a movie to
It's a great
sell.
design.
Oh yeah, I love it. And he doesn't have a face. He doesn't have eyes, but you can still feel when he's relatable and he's vulnerable, and that's kind of a marriage of how he speaks, the kind of musical whale songs in which he speaks,
Mm-hmm.
and then just like in Ryland's, in Dr. Grace's point of view, it takes some getting used to, but eventually you find out it's just like if we were to meet an intelligent alien species in real life, their form of life would be so different from us, but put them together long enough, they'll start understanding more, especially if you put them two solo members of their species in a relatively tiny spacecraft, narrow corridors,
Mm-hmm.
and they both have one goal in mind. Yeah, they're gonna learn each other's language and stuff like that.
Typically, with a lot of movies, you get the alien versus the human, and there's some sort of either they're gonna fight or it's gonna be this, it's gonna be that. It's the last two soldiers, or whatever the case may be. In this one, and both with the book and the movie, it's not that at all. It is I equate it to two scientists just meeting each other. Two people that are super into science happen to meet each other. Yeah, they can't speak the same language, but they figure out how to get around just the logistical challenges of trying to communicate with each other and the other uh, differences in terms of their culture, in terms of just the alienness of the whole situation, but it's a more positive spin in that we're coming together. Yeah, we're completely different species, but we're coming together to figure out this problem, and we relate so much to each other. Even though we grew up light years apart, we still like science. At the end of the day, they both do. They're both into the discovery of the other's culture, the other's history, the other's this, the other's that. Theory of relativity. Obviously, Ryland teaches Rocky all that, radiation, things like that. But Rocky teaches Grace some of the different, like Rocky would go through and teach Ryland stuff, especially like when it came to the Xenonite. So it was nice to have a story where, no, we're not going to fight. We realize, oh, you like science, I like science. Let's figure this thing out. It's a nice like breath of fresh air compared to what we typically get in a lot of just not just film, but like in stories in general. The alien is like Independence Day or just aliens, the early predators. They're typically something we have to fear. And in this case, yeah, there's a mini freak out for a second, but it's
a little jump scare
cool.
when you see his little
Yeah,
hand.
yeah, Space Bros at the end of the day.
Yeah. And I gotta say, my favorite part in the book is when they first meet and they're in the airlock with the little, clear xenonite, and Grace has the laptops that are kind of duct taped together, and he goes one, and then holds up his finger, and then Rocky says what that musical version of one in his language, and then he records it down, and then he goes two, and then Rocky starts getting really giddy because he realizes what Grace is doing. He's trying to patch Rocky's language into his computer system so they can communicate, freehand. So it's really well described in the book, and I know in the audio book they include little musical notes because Rocky speaks in musical notes. It's like a music box whenever he speaks. So
it really is. It kind of reminds me, especially because at some point, once Rylan learns enough of Rocky's language, then he's understanding what Rocky means, and eventually they layer in. They have the musical notes of Rocky's language layered over or layered with the voiceover saying the actual word. But the way they edit it and the way they apply the effects to it, it kind of reminds me of Soundwave from the Transformers cartoon, like way back in the day. It not as deep or as gravelly or as scary, but it reminds me of that, and I really like that touch that they do in the book. It really enhances the whole experience.
Yeah, they really knocked it out of the park with this one. No, props to the character design and the writing, and just I think Lord and Miller were just the perfect duo to bring this movie to life. This is actually their first live action movie to be released completely since 22 Jump Street in 2014. And they were the directors of Solo, a Star Wars story, but they ended up having creative differences with Disney, and it ended up going to Ron Howard.
Yeah.
So
dang.
Yeah. Well,
I mean, I'm one of those that's like, Solo is not my favorite, but it's fine. I mean, it's a fine movie. It's whatever.
Yeah, I think they were brought in because of their comedic sensibilities. Because at that point, had they done the Lego movie? I'm pretty sure they had the Lego movie and Cloudy with the Chance of Meatballs. So, but that would have been their first live action since the very rated R 22 Jump Street.
Right. Very, yeah.
Yeah, but I can't speak as to why they were let go or why they parted ways. But I do know that Solo ended up being Star Wars' first bomb, which, like you said, it's weird because the movie wasn't bad. I think people were just being weird because The Last Jedi, which I loved. I like The Last Jedi a lot. And I've never been the hugest Star Wars guy, just because when it comes to nerdy stuff, I can sometimes feel myself spread too thin. Like, I can't possibly be into every nerdy thing, like Dragon Ball Z and The Matrix and Star Wars and Star Trek and the MCU. But all my friends were pretty much Star Wars guys, especially my best friend who he read all the novelizations, all the the expanded universe stuff that came out before the sequel trilogy kind of did away with it, and he was pretty upset when Disney started the sequel trilogy and just ignored the expanded universe. So I think that year, Lord and Miller parted ways, and Solo was left to Ron Howard. But they ended up winning an Oscar for Best Animated Feature for Into the Spider-Verse.
It's not a bad makeup for
Yeah.
that. I mean, that's an incredible movie.
Not a bad trade-off. Mm-hmm. But yeah, no, those I love those movies. Those and that took risks because just the way the Spider-Verse movies are animated, I feel like it's very kinetic and it's like a comic book panel come to life. It could have been the more straightforward Pixar, Despicable Me stuff, but yeah, Spider-Verse is very, very well done. And I hadn't watched what's the second one? Across the Spider-Verse?
Yeah, Across the Spider-Verse.
I never caught that one in theaters. I just caught that one, a couple months ago, and I really enjoyed it. I don't know if they directed it, but they were probably too busy directing this.
I think they directed it because I think they're still working on Beyond the Spider-Verse.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I look forward to that. That what a cliffhanger.
Yeah, one day,
yeah,
we'll see the result.
Ryan Gosling seeing some success. I've always loved Ryan Gosling, and I absolutely love Blade Runner 2049. I feel like that movie does not get enough love. I remember reading about the director Denis Villeneuve and Ryan Gosling, and I think Ridley Scott was producer because he was the director of the original one. They were surprised that movie was a flop because they said it had all the tracking numbers, all the numbers that were going to show it would be a big hit, and it ended up not making a ton of money, which to me is insane because it's such a beautiful movie with the depth that you don't usually get in modern day special effects heavy sci-fi. And then now we have Project Hail Mary, which is the same way. I think there are some philosophical questions to be asked about Rocky and Grace's mission. Like in the back half of the book, he and Rocky part ways with the implication that Grace is gonna pass on all the stuff he learned about Rocky and his species to Earth. And obviously he's got the Talmiba, he can save Earth, and then I'm sure as soon as he sets foot on Earth, they're going to want to learn all they can about the Iridians. Then he realizes that the Talmiba they bred was bred in those xenonite canisters, and it can escape the nitrogen that they use to kill it. It evolved to escape the nitrogen by hiding it within the molecules of the xenonite, and eventually it just straight up bursts through the xenonite and it ends up eating all the fuel, and Grace is able to contain it before it eats his fuel, but he's left with the choice. Does he go back home and hope Rocky discovered it in time, or does he basically doom all of Arid and Rocky just so he can ignore it and save himself? Do you think Grace made the right choice?
Oh yeah, I mean I don't think there's any question he made the right one because he needed to save. Obviously, he did what he could for Earth, but at the same time, he's not going to leave his best friend at that point behind, and he's not going to, even though he doesn't know the Arid people, the Iridians, and all that. He's got to go save Rocky and the rest of them, and he has a way to save both. So just take it. And at that point, whether it's the book or the movie, I think he. Like in the movie, they have that third line of you just need to. He's not heroic. He says he's not heroic or whatever. But I think it's Yao who says something to the effect of you just need to be. You need to find someone to be heroic for. And in that moment for him, it's Rocky. He knows he needs to do that. And in the book, it's just that like he's way more emotional about it. Like that's my friend. I can't let my friend die. And both ways, I mean, either way, he made the right choice in both the movie and the book.
Totally, yeah. I think he made the right choice because he wouldn't have been able to live with himself if he got to Earth and had all these parades and statues made of him. But he basically doomed. I mean, they're gonna be aware that he discovered alien life, and then when they try to communicate with it, they know exactly where it is. They try to communicate with it and nothing's there because he let them die. That's gonna be, they're gonna want to tear those statues down.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, no, now there's talks of a sequel with how successful the movie is. Andy Weir's talking about writing a sequel to the book. I mean, I'd love to see the two characters again, but I think like what we got with them and the ending we got was so on point. I don't think we really need one. What do you think?
Yeah. No, I was saying this earlier today on the segment I do, that it feels like it's one of those stories for me where I'm fine as is. I don't need to see I'd rather you leave me wanting more than overstaying your welcome sort of thing. To me, it's the equivalent of Watchmen from 2019, where it's perfect as is. Yes, you could go and tell more of the story, but that's okay. Not everything needs a sequel, and Project Hail Mary is one of those where I get why they're talking about it because of the success of it and because we're in the current state of everything has to be an IP at this point. Mm-hmm. So I'm not surprised that they're going to be looking at it. I just personally am like, I'm fine. Specifically for the book version ending, I don't know how they're going to do it because in the book version, he's much older. By the time I think in the book he ends up being 53.
Yeah,
and he's talking about his bones and this and that. And I don't know how you're gonna do a sequel, because is it going to be him coming back with Rocky and whoever else, or how are they going to pursue that? I don't know, but if they go in a direction, it makes sense for the movie. Ryan's younger. I don't know that they'll age him up as much as they did in the book version. I don't know. We'll see if there's a good enough story. I mean, I trust Andy Weir at this point, especially with his writing. I've enjoyed most of his books, so I trust it. But I'm to the point of I'm good. I liked what we got with Rocky and Grace, but I don't need more.
Yeah,
if that makes sense.
Plus, I mean, if they do it, it'll probably take 4 years, and Ryan Gosling himself would be around that age by that point, because isn't he like 45 now? So he something like that.
Let me hold on. Let me
44,
do a live
45.
Google. He is, if my computer would. Oh yeah, he is 45. God.
45, yeah. So
wow.
He'd be.
That's some good genes.
So yeah, seriously. So he'd be 49. You're talking about writing a book, releasing a book, the book being a hit, and then making a movie sequel. I mean, I'm thinking at least 4 years. So 49-year-old playing a 53-year-old. Plus, in the movie, he wasn't nearly that age. I mean, they didn't mention the 16-year time gap.
No, you can feel that there had been some time, obviously, with the scope of the terrarium that the Iridians build for him, but you don't really know how long it's been. They don't, like in the book, of course, he has a cane. He has, there's elements to where it's like, oh yeah, it's been the 16 years or whatever it's been. They go into the food thing. They don't really touch on the food aspect here. So it's more, to me, it's more doable in the movie version, but we'll see where they go. And I would imagine, if anything, I would bet the movie comes out before the book, and Andy Weir just kind of helps, like, give them the ideas of what he's thinking about. Because I know he's talked about it as of late. He has some ideas, but nothing like concrete as of yet.
Yeah, there is something there with the relativity of Ryland's space journey. Only felt like 3.5 years for him, but it was 12 years, at least one way. But they don't even go over, I think even in the book, how long the trip would feel for him from Arid to Earth. I mean, I don't think there's a point for them to go over it, because I think he mentioned something about going back to Earth one day, but I don't think he's really considering it.
Yeah, definitely not in the book. I feel like he thinks about it, but with the amount of time that he's spent on Arid, that's pretty much his home at that point. So I can't imagine him going back.
Plus, it would suck to go through all that, brave those impossible odds. I mean, at least he survived and then end up dying in space anyway, because He thought he was going to die in space because the one-way trip thing
Right.
against his will. That ended up not ended up being saved by that. Then he thought, if I save Rocky and let him know that Talmiba eats through the xenonite, I'm going to end up starving to death in space or
Right.
freezing or whatever. And he survives that. So then what? He's going to take his chance a third time just so he can go back to Earth and get all the parades. I mean, I would
Right.
want to be there to see humanity meet an extraterrestrial intelligence for the first time, but I mean, yeah,
Mhm.
like I said, by that point he'd be braving that interstellar gap for a third
Mhm.
time. And what would he have? He'd have his coma slurries all used up. He'd just have all his me burgers
Yeah,
and
yeah, exactly.
and
I wonder if it's maybe if the sequel would go in the direction of less about going back to Earth, but maybe just just exploring more of the universe around them, because there's something at the end where I think Rocky and him are talking, and this is the book version, where they talk and they reference, I forget how they word it exactly, but it's something to the effect of, you think we're the only two, and they're both like, no, there's probably more life. So maybe that's the direction they would go in, where it's Rocky and Ryland finding more life out there, and the possible challenges and things they have to deal with to either find that life, or experiments or whatever. Not like in a like alien invasion type thing. I don't think that would ever be the case, but something, another scientific based journey for the two of them to go on, and maybe discovering another alien race. And that could be another amoeba that's very small, or maybe something a little bit bigger.
yeah, it's nuts that they found life like 4 times. They found the microscopic astrophage, which are so cool. They're such cool particles that are capable of so much. Like, they exist on the surface of the sun, and they do have water in them, which just speaks to their capabilities because they're literally living on the surface of the sun and in the atmosphere of Venus, but they have water somewhere in them. So just what kind of stuff are they coated with? And they can be used as radiation protection, they can be used as fuel, all that. And Dr. Grace discovers Rocky, the Arids, because they're both there in Tau Ceti on the same mission. And when they go to Adrian, they discover the Talmebas. And they're all made up of DNA, right? Like, and
Yeah.
that's why Rocky thinks all life has a common ancestor. And I think that kind of ticks Grace off because, he was the one who wanted to say life can evolve without water, but that would mean
Mhm.
it would have to not be based on DNA because
Mhm.
anyway, we're talking about the science and all that stuff behind Project Hail Mary, and I think that's why it works so well because it is like those Bill Nye episodes and stuff. We used to watch
Mhm.
when we were kids. They just make science so interesting.
Yeah, they
Cut out,
definitely do.
yeah, they cut out all the boring stuff and they get right to what's what's cool about it and what cool stuff you can do. They don't go into how like long and laborious and boring Grace's experiments with breeding all those Talmeba must have been. But Andy Weir he really has a gift for building those worlds, a world where a character can conduct experiments and make it easy for the reader to understand what he's going for. Like,
Mhm.
when he's breeding those Talmeba, he needs the tank that they're in, like the Venus atmosphere, because that's where the Petrova line leads in our solar system. Then he needs to make
Mhm.
another one that's like the three world atmosphere, because that's basically the Iridians analog to Venus, because in their solar system their astrophage are going from their sun to three world. And I found it funny that Rocky's species doesn't name their planets after Greek or Roman gods. It's just one world, two world, three world.
Yeah, yeah. The very different naming system.
Yeah, I just think it's cool. We find out that Rocky's species built a space elevator. Their space program is much newer to them than ours is to us, and that's because they really just developed a space travel program to combat the astrophages. So, but it's cool that they built that space elevator, and I've seen so many science shows growing up. A space elevator is just basically building an elevator from Earth to the moon to try and combat like just how much fuel it takes to get a space shuttle out of Earth's orbit. Because I remember, in order to get a space shuttle to leave Earth's escape gravity, it has to be traveling at 8 miles a second. So, I mean, and that just takes a massive amount of fuel. So,
yeah.
And
needs some astrophage.
Yeah, exactly.
Needs some astrophage. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, if only that were real. But it didn't eat our sun.
Bright side, yes, exactly.
Yeah. No. All right. Well, Michael, thank you for coming on and talking to me about a movie we both really love and something I'm dying to see again before it's out of theaters.
For sure. Yeah, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
And thank you. Yeah, and after we see Super Mario, maybe I'll have you on again and we can talk about that.
For sure. Sounds good.
All right. Thanks, bud.